Hello, how are you guys doing today? Let's start the stream today. I've had a good day, a good night's sleep, so get uh, let's get on with it again. I'll have to work on my to-do list for a little bit because I haven't had time to do that yesterday or this morning. And this is not really priority. This is not either. Player character should be able to hold tools and use those for building. A tile entity saving system. Server client networking. That's a big one. We really need to figure out how to define this. What else is there to do? Let's start up Unity while we wonder what should I do today. Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. One thing we could do is we could make an issue, because want to I want to think about some problem that came up into my mind yesterday. How to do meta info. So basically, yesterday we were working on random tile variations. So, like for example, if you have grass or stone, then different different cells, different tiles, which are each of the stone type, might look slightly different because they are positioned in a different coordinate on the grid, so a different tile variation is chosen. This could give a bit more natural terrain once we actually have the pixel art necessary, of course. So that's what we worked on yesterday. I want to use the same tile variation mechanism. I want to reuse it also for different kinds of blocks. So I want some blocks to be able to specify that they contain tile variations which are not random, which are not randomly chosen by their position on the grid, but which instead are chosen by their metadata included somewhere in the chunk. So I'll take Minecraft as an example, as a very popular game, which many people will know about. Minecraft stores their chunks as large arrays of 16-bit integers, unsigned, I believe. And 12 of those bits are used for the actual type of the tile, like, for example, stone or dirt or glass or sand or whatever. And the remaining 4 bits, the least significant bits, those are used as metadata. So you have 4 bits you can use for pretty much whatever you want. And in many cases, those 4 bits are used to determine what kind of color a tile might be. So if you have glass, for example, glass can be dyed using different color dyes. Coincidentally, that's like about 15 or 16 colors. So yeah, you can use those 4 bits to index into some kind of color array, and then you can like show different kinds of tiles for different colors. So I think that's a good idea to implement. It should not be too much work, but I do not want to work on that today because I'm still trying to figure out how I want to lay out my data exactly. Right now I'm just using unsigned short integers, so 16-bit numbers, to store all the tiles. So basically, if I take calc, basically that means I can have about 16 to the power of 16 different kinds of tiles. So that's like 65,000 different types of tiles. Now obviously we're probably never going to have that many different kinds of tiles, but yeah, if you take 4 tiles away from that, then you end up with 4 to the power of 12. I mean, if you take 4 bits away from that, then you end up with 2 to the power of 12 different possibilities for tile types. So then you have 4,000 types of tiles you could put into the game before you run into problems with your integer not being large enough. So personally, I don't think it's likely that I'll ever make 4,000 different kinds of tiles by myself. But yeah, I do want this game to be easily moddable. So I'm not entirely sure if 4,000 will ultimately be enough in the end. If it's at all possible, I would really like to future-proof this system so that we do not need to worry about such issues. Maybe in 10 years there is a whole modding scene about the game, and people will be putting hundreds of mods into their game. Then you could conceivably end up with quite a lot of different types of tiles. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I should use, like Minecraft, a short integer and then use 4 bits for metadata. Or maybe I should just simply use a normal integer, like 32 bits. And then, well, then we'll have even more bits over. So, like, yeah, we can either take 16 bits, or I can use 32 bits. And yeah, if we take 32 and we subtract 8 bits from that, then we end up with 24 bits, which is still more than enough. And we'll end up with 8 metabits, so that's twice as many as Minecraft has, which will allow us to have, well, possibly 256 types of colors. So that would be cool. Like, you have flexibility in that case. It might never be needed, but at least if you ever need it, you'll know you're not gonna run into problems. So with 24, 20 to the power of 24. So if we take 24 bits for the regular tile type, then we can store a crap load of different types of tiles. So we're never going to fill that. But yeah, of course, that takes twice as much memory in the end. So we will be storing either ushort or uint, a 16-bit int or a 32-bit int. I'm kind of doubting if the memory cost is actually worth it. So that's why I'm going to make an issue right now. So before I start working on metadata, I want to have had some time to think about this issue, the pros and cons of each approach. And if anyone is watching this and wants to comment on it, then I encourage you to comment, because yeah, I would like to have your opinions. How to do tile meta info. We have a few options. One, store 16-bit unsigned integers. Short in C#. And use the for least significant bits for metadata and the remaining 12 bits for tile type. Or we can do what I just described, to use something a bit larger, a normal integer, unsigned integer. And use the 8 least significant bits for metadata and the remaining 24 bits for tile type. Option 1 has as an advantage Option 1 has as an advantage that it takes the least amount of memory. Option 2 has as an advantage that it will be a much more future proof if we ever decide that we need the ability to have more than 4,000, what was it, 96 types of tiles. In the future, if modding takes off, we might need the ability to have more than that many types of tiles. There is also another option 3. And that is to store metadata in a separate buffer. I don't really like option tree, because that means instead of accessing one buffer um, for a single cell to render a tile, you suddenly are going to have to access two buffers. So your memory will no longer be located in the same place, because those buffers, they might be stored in very different regions of memory. So yeah, I prefer to have both of those things in the same buffer. Otherwise, you might have a lot of how should I explain this? I'm at least trying to optimize at least a little bit for cache efficiency and stuff like that. I don't know how successful I am, because yeah, in the border tiles you still need to access different buffers. But yeah, I don't really like option tree, because this means that for rendering you will need to access at least two different buffers per chunk, which might impact performance of the game. These buffers may be located anywhere in memory. They may not be located near each other in memory. Go dial. Now I am using in C#, so maybe trying to optimize for cache is might just be a bit weird, but you get to try these things out, you know. Try to find and use optimization techniques, especially if there are those kinds of techniques that are better used at the design stage of the architecture of your game than those micro optimization tweaks, which yeah, those can always be added later if you find out that some kind of thing is causing performance issues using a profiler. Yeah. Let me know your thoughts on this topic. For instance, yeah, I know that Forge maybe has some information. States and metadata, data values. this is basically just a list of existing IDs, it seems. Oh yeah, you can also use it for durability of tools and stuff like that. Or is it... oh yeah, if it's an item then it can go higher than 16 bits. 16... can go higher than 16 because that has access to a number of more bits than a block in the world has access to. Can I find a better explanation? This is what I want, I think. Yeah, I can't really find a good explanation right now. Maybe this one. This is such an ugly site. I mean, the information here is good. I've done some Minecraft modding in the past, but this is a good explanation. Let's see. So the quote. Oh. Okay. Unfortunately, option 2 would also take double the amount of memory compared to option 1. Okay, I'm going to submit this issue. So this is recorded now, so then I can keep coming back to this and think about this issue. And maybe hear some responses from other people. And then eventually when it comes time to implement DAL metadata, then I can actually have a reasoned set of pros and cons, which will allow me to choose one way over another. Of course, one thing is that we probably don't need to take as much memory for our chunks as Minecraft, because we are a 2D game instead of a 3D game. So chances are we might be able to get away with just using some more memory for each chunk. That might actually be a good way to go about it. And we can be sure that we won't run into any issues later if we find out Okay, so that's an issue I put on there. Let's see, I'm going to work on, I think I want to work on player movement today. Tweaks. I think I'm going to, I think today I want to move the player movement code to its own system, so that it's no longer part of the main class, and instead it has its own little class, which should, of course, be a good thing for the organization of the project, because we do not want to rack up technical debt. We want to periodically clean up the code so that everything stays organized and we can still make sense of it. So yeah, I think that's the first thing I'm going to do today. Let's see. Game systems is where we probably want to be. Game, main. Wait, did I move the scene to this folder? Yeah, I guess I moved it to the game directory. Didn't really intend that, I think. Anyway, that's not really a big issue. Let's go move some player code. So I'm going to define a new class called PlayerSystem, because it's going to manage players. So yeah. And yeah, people say you shouldn't make manager classes, but sometimes you need manager classes. I found that that trying to use a traditional object-oriented approach, like used in regular software, is sometimes not the best idea in games. Because you end up with a lot of objects which all somehow interact with each other, and it becomes a big spaghetti code. So that's why right now I'm just trying to do it in a more methodical approach. Like if I have player and player character, those are mainly going to be used for just storage of stuff, and hopefully not too much complicated stuff. Hey, you're working on a 2D game, Terraria style. Cool. Thanks. 3F3C5. That's a complicated name to pronounce. How are you doing today? Have you been awake for long? I just had breakfast and stuff and a little walk. And then I started streaming. Where was I? Oh yeah. At the copyright notice. PlayerSystem. I'm going to copy this line. So, implement abstract. Click update. Disable. Enable. You just woke up in Germany. Now I'm working on my 2D game. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, as you can see, I'm also working on a 2D game. I started streaming last week, Wednesday, so I'm still learning the ropes about streaming, but I have been developing games for quite a few years already. I think maybe I need some kind of init method here. Let's see. Or should I maybe... How do I want to handle this? Should I store a list of players in the world or in play? Yeah. Maybe. Of course, players can move between worlds, so it might be better to store them in the player system instead, rather than in a world. Of course, it's only their player character that actually runs around in the world itself. The player object should probably be just some kind of abstract thing which just passes on messages to the player character objects. Yeah, I think I'm going to store the list in the list of players in the player system. Maybe add this to the interface. Cool, have you already thought about how to write the world generator? I already have a bit of a world generator. Let me just comment this stuff out. But it's really very simple still. It's not really very flexible. But it does a very basic job of generating some terrain. Let's see if we can actually compile right now. Yeah. So let's just get rid of this. So this is what I have now. Last session I was working on random tile variations. So that's why we have these weird colors. They made it easy to distinguish what was going on under the hood. So basically all of these are stone tiles, and this green tile is like a different variation of stone. So like I have, if I look in the tiles folder, I have like 3 different tiles for stone, and I can add other ones to it later. So this way we can make the terrain a little bit rough and uneven, and maybe not too regular. So that's very useful for things like rough stone and grass. Well, do you use a library for generating? Yeah, a small one. I used lib noise in the past, but I found it's quite a large beast of a library. So I might include that later, but right now I'm just using a library called fast noise. This is my world generator class. It's still very basic. So yeah, this is the main generation algorithm. Here we make a noise gen. Oh no, we take a noise gen. Let's see. Oh yeah, here the noise gen is created using the world seed. And that noise gen is then used to generate some sort of floating point layers of values, which are manipulated a bit, and then you get something that looks kind of like a terrain. So yeah, this is how the game looks like right now. It's still really basic. I'm still mostly working on the tech side of things. Basically the most fundamental building blocks of the game. The underlying architecture. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time on making these grids, making them work efficiently, and I think I succeeded pretty well in that. So basically, we have grid chunks, sort of like how Minecraft does it. So every time somewhere in this chunk one cell changes, this chunk is the mesh is uh, rebuilt, and then of course it's being cached, so you don't have to regenerate those meshes all the time. Nor do you have to draw 1,000 instances of some quad mesh, which is not really very efficient. So every time a chunk changes somewhere, then only this gets redone. If I change a chunk here, like if I draw a few tiles here, or I remove a few tiles, then of course once there's been a change, then it will rebuild the mesh and the colliders for that chunk. And this is one grid with one chunk, which has colliders and a rigid body, so I can move it around. I plan to use this functionality for stuff like building vehicles. So a player could like create a new grid and then add some thrusters to it and a cockpit, and he might have a spaceship or an airship or a submarine, stuff like that. That's what I want to do with the game. So yeah, I hope that was an interesting explanation about what I'm doing with this project. I have almost the same system, but I don't use game objects and components. I only draw the mesh. Yeah. I considered doing that because then you don't need you need less bookkeeping. Basically, you only need to store the mesh in some kind of list or dictionary or something. In addition to other chunk data, of course. But then indeed you don't need to do any game object bookkeeping. But I explicitly decided to to use game objects for one reason. Like it makes it easier to use the Unity editor, the inspector, to see what's going on under the hood. So right now I just if I look at the world, then I can just select a chunk and then go to that chunk and see what it's doing. So right now the camera's not over this chunk, so it's not being rendered. So basically the mesh has been unloaded because, yeah, why keep that stuff in memory when you don't need it? So let's see, where are we? Ah, yeah. So once I come back to this chunk, it should re-render, it should rebuild that mesh and then create it again. But yeah, the main advantage is that if I do it like this, then I can just simply use a mesh renderer and a mesh filter, basically the way Unity normally does it. And this gives me the advantage that I can actually use the scene view and inspect it like I would any other regular game object with a mesh. So basically I can choose shaded here, or wireframe, or shaded wireframe, or any of these other options. And if you're using stuff like graphics.drawMesh, then I believe you cannot do that. You can only really draw it in the game window, and I believe it doesn't really show up properly in the scene window, if I remember correctly. Yeah, in any event, having this bookkeeping here just makes it easier to inspect what's going on under the hood. So I'm willing to pay a tiny performance price for that. I hope that was a clear explanation. So what I want to do today is oh cool, yes, that's a good reason. I use for wireframe view shader, so I don't need the editor. Ah yeah, that's also an option. Yeah, I think why would you re-implement functionality if it's already in the engine? So uh, if you consider it from that perspective, it's uh, yeah, why reinvent the wheel, right? And it's definitely helped me. I had to do a lot of debugging to figure out what was going wrong when my tiles were not rendering properly. So seeing the shaded wireframe really helped a lot. So basically, I could re-enable this. So right now we're only rendering stone, which happens to be number 1 in the list of tiles. So if I change it to this one, then it should render either stone or concrete. And it's just like, yeah, I have a very basic tile for concrete. That's this one. I don't know if it's large enough that you can see anything, but it's there. Maybe. Yeah, Windows Photo app is not really useful for that. This is how it looks, yeah. This should be visible, right? So this is the concrete tile. So now we have random concrete and stone mixed in with each other. And of course concrete has only one variation. So yeah, what I wanted to do today was to work on player movement. Why I re-implement all? Because Unity is not optimized. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, it depends on how you use it, right? So yeah, I guess if you want to make something like Crysis, then it's not really the best engine to use. But if you want to make something like this that I'm doing right now, it's a very useful piece of software. So yeah, I should probably implement some kind of init. I created a framework which allows me to use all classes based on Unity Engine.object on every thread, and I can program C++ in Unity. Oh, wow, that sounds complicated, but it also sounds really useful. Uh, I think I've gone a different approach. I'm going to try to keep all my data outside Unity objects, so in plain C# objects. Then yeah, you can simply change those objects from various threads, because it's not really related to Unity. And then objects that are on the Unity thread should update themselves when they get changed. So I think that is for me a good approach if I eventually want to do threading stuff. Especially for things like networking, threading is going to be important eventually. So I try to keep threading in mind, but right now I'm just not actively doing a lot of threading. But yeah, I'm trying to structure my data in such a way that threading will be easier. It will be easy to do later on. Let's see. What are we going to need in this init function? Yeah, so let's just move all of this to init. Things like moving millions of game objects, real-time, FPS drop when using update. Have to find out how to create an object and register in the native Unity object manager. Sorry for huge text. Oh, it's fine. It's fine. 4F3C5. I like talking. Yeah. So right now most of the player movement code is in player character, and the player input code, so basically getting input from the keyboard, is now happening in player. And eventually we'll have to do something like player local and player remote, so we can actually do some proper networking. And yeah, this will probably have to be changed or removed or overhauled somehow, because it probably will not work nicely over a network. But yeah, now I'm just trying to move the stuff into PlayerSystem. Is there any other player-related stuff here? So let's move it from here. Player character transform. Yeah, let's just also put that within PlayerSystem for now. Eventually I'll probably add a camera system. It could actually be quite a good idea. So yeah, basically I'm trying to move as much logic as possible as much game logic as possible to these systems, which are just in a list here and which I then iterated over and executed. So that way I know that I will have control over when update is called, when tick is called, and all the other things are called. So then hopefully later on I'll be able to easily control what runs on one thread, what runs on another thread, and stuff like that. But of course, the game systems are also modern behaviors. So you do need to be careful about what kind of things you do in a system. So if I'm going to add threading, then I might have to rewrite a few systems so they use stuff like queuing or things like that. But yeah, I found that if you make a game where every single object in the game is a game object and which has a dozen different components which all do stuff and update, and then and which all have references to each other into some kind of giant spider network, then it can get messy really quick. So I'm using the systems approach. I'm trying to avoid that. It's a little bit similar to the idea of entity component systems. Probably not entirely the correct way to do it, but yeah, everyone has his own ways of doing things, right? Yeah, this should work as I expect it to. So now in main game mod I can add a new system. Solid window. Just add it to the list. I'll probably need to need some kind of method to add new systems. Right now I'm just adding them to a list, which is a little bit little bit of a code smell, because theoretically any mod like this could just remove an existing system from the list, which might break the game in all kinds of weird ways if other systems depend on that. Sorry. Yeah, seems to be what I want. Layer.update. Oh yeah. We could probably get rid of this. Oh wait, that's not related to players. Yeah, it's kind of related, but this is about editing tiles. Should I put that in PlayerSystem? Let's think. I think I'm going to leave that here for a little bit. You know what? Not all systems need this. Why is this no reference? Oh. Oh, yes, I get it. It's just a little, yeah, ugly thing which is required because this is mono behavior and I do not want to all the time manually create a game object and set its name and its position and all that stuff and add the component. So this is like just a simple method for this. See, like this. So that way you can relatively easily create a game object and put a component on it, even if you don't really care about it. So you see, I've made these tick world and update world and init and functions and stuff, because I know those are never going to be called by the Unity engine, so I have control over them. But if for some reason one system wants to actually get updates from the engine itself, then that's also possible. So flexibility. Perhaps some people might find it a bit dangerous, because of course if you have systems that get in the habit of using the regular engine update calls, then of course things like threading might become more complicated, because you don't really know if a system works on the engine update or on the main update by this thing. Oh yeah, now I remember the real reason for it. Yeah, a system should normally not use normal Unity update methods. Should not implement normal update methods. Because all the updates are done through the system list, so all systems automatically get updated by these calls over here. But the real reason that I wanted to make every system a mono behavior is so you get access to stuff like gizmos, go routines, and what else is easy to do on a game object, all that stuff. So probably if you're making a system, maybe you're modeling the game or you're adding some kind of DLC to the game, then if you're making a system, then you should probably not be implementing the Unity update, but instead you should put all your update logic in the tick world or update world or whatever other update functions I might add. Where was I? Trying to get rid of all the compile errors, runtime errors. Oh, this is 0. Okay, I think something didn't quite go as planned. Is it allowed to post a link here? Yeah, why not? It's not really like this is a busy chat with a lot of people watching. At least would appreciate you not posting any malware, but guess it's fine for now. So this is a screenshot of your game. Oh, looks interesting. Yeah, that looks like a large world. So is this a top-down map? Or is this something like floating sky islands? Looks cool, this map. So I see you have all these interesting snake-like caves or rivers. Do you know the Android game The Blockheads? No, I cannot say that I have. I have never heard of it. So it's like a 2D Minecraft, I guess. Looks interesting with the trains and all. Let's figure out what went wrong here. I get it. Init never gets called. That's the problem. Is that your game? The Blockheads? It's like Terraria, but with a 2.5D voxel style, and this is a remake of it, because the developer are too slow with creating new items and other stuff. Yes, like 2D Minecraft. No, it isn't. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, it's not your game. I understand. Yeah, chat delay can be annoying. I totally agree. There's an option to reduce chat delay. Maybe I should try it sometime. I'm led to believe that it might cause a bit more buffering if you have a slow connection though, so I'm not entirely sure if it's a good idea to enable it just yet, but I might just try it one day. Yeah, do I want to do this in the create or in init? I'm not calling init anywhere just yet. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if I want to do it like this. So maybe I better put it like here for now. Can always move it around later. Right now I just added init, so init doesn't get called yet, but I'm not entirely sure where, at what point in time I want to call this. The systems get created after the tiles have been registered, which is in post init, so naming this init might not be the best idea. I think I'm going to remove it for now, and maybe add it later. So this should work better. Now I just need to in base game mode to call the right thing. So yeah, this should work. My pacing is rather slow today. Yeah, this works as it should. This never gets old. I implemented moving grids a few days ago, and every time I keep playing around with them if I'm in play mode. So this is just one chunk, but in theory a grid can contain a lot of chunks. This one does not move, of course, because this is a terrain grid. This one does. Let's see. Yeah. I'm going to remove this because I'm not entirely sure how I want to add this yet. I'm probably going to add some kind of init method eventually. Seems like my nose is a little bit closed up, so every time I breathe through my nose I have this very weird noise. Oh, hello Fidget Spinner PhD. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate it if I know that people like what I'm doing. How was your day today, Fidget Spinners? What was I looking for? I've completely lost my train of thought. I don't need this one. Let's just commit, see what's changed, what we can change. So I tried to make very small commits. My day was alright, man. Thanks. How was yours? Well, I'm having a good day. Yesterday I had a nice stream. Unfortunately, not very long because I had other stuff to do in the afternoon or after lunch. I mean, so I had two very short streams, but I still managed to get some things done. And I also started uploading stuff to YouTube after editing, of course, removing some dead air. So yeah, that's cool. So we changed base game mode to add the player system. This is something we want. Removed player related stuff from main. Yes. That's also something we want. This is not really important right now. Let's discard that. Player update. This is no long. Yeah, we removed that. How does start look right now? Sorry. Did that hurt anyone's ears, by the way? I'm still trying to figure out sound volume. Maybe the sound is too low or too high. Okay, let's commit that. This don't need to be committed. PlayerSystem.cs we have added, so of course we're going to commit that. Yeah, this one I don't need to commit. This one I don't need to commit. Okay. Move player management logic to a newly created system called PlayerSystem. Okay. Can get rid of that. Everything's still working. Usually if I do things like discarding during a commit, then I check if everything still works, because maybe I just made a broken commit. And then if there's something I still want to change about this commit, then I choose commit options, amend latest commit. And of course you can only do that if you haven't pushed your changes to GitHub yet. So that's a little trick to if you make a mistake, then you can just fix the mistake and nobody will know about it. Yeah. So some player management is going into PlayerSystem. Most of the player-related logic is still in player character, which is mainly concerned with movement and collision, and which, to be honest, is quite of a little bit of a mess. Previously, I tried two approaches. At first, I had the approach using, basically the Unity, just detecting colliders, detecting collisions using the Unity collision event methods. You know, these ones, the standard ones. Collision enter, stay, and exit. But that wasn't really working exactly as I wanted, so then I tried rewriting it so that it used mostly raycasts, which is usually a better way to handle things in 2D games. But yeah, that led to other issues, so maybe eventually I want to create some sort of a hybrid of these two approaches, so that we use raycasts to determine if we can actually move into a space, and if we detect that we will be colliding with something, then we can act appropriately. Like, for example, we can slide along a surface instead of moving through it and then detecting a collision. Because if you try to handle collisions after the fact, then it becomes much more difficult to determine how far back you should move, stuff like that. So the thing was, if you're only using raycast collisions, and I was using mostly the velocity to determine the length of the raycast, then you run into a problem where if some other object moves towards you, then the raycast might not detect that there's a collision coming, because your own velocity is really low, so it's not really checking very far ahead of you, which would make sense if the landscape was static, like in most tile-based side-scrollers. But in this game I am trying to make grids move, actually. I'm trying to make vehicles out of grids. So I have to consider those things a little bit more carefully. So I think I want to use raycasts for the normal movement. So like if you're detecting that you are going to collide, then you should respond to that in some way, like not moving, maybe using only half of what we would normally move with the current velocity, then starting to slide or something, and then to handle the remaining situations where something actually moves into you, then we're going to fall back on the more Unity way of dealing with collisions, which is those collision handlers. So yeah, I hope I explained this correctly and that you guys actually found it interesting. Yeah, so that's how I want to do that eventually. But I'm a little bit running out of time, I think. In half an hour, maybe an hour, I'll have lunch. I always find it difficult to work when I know that I'm going to stop working relatively soon. But I'll see how far we get. I have quite a few numbers here. What was I doing again? Oh yeah, I also tried to implement some kind of step assist function, because otherwise, if you're walking over terrain, it could get really annoying if you have to jump for every tiny little tile that's in front of your feet. And of course, it's also useful if you want stairs or something like that. Yeah, this is all. Maybe I should just rewrite some of this and start from scratch, but and again, rewriting is the devil, so maybe I should just take a look at it again. What was I? Yeah, player movement tweaks. So yeah, it's really quite ugly. Like I'm using rigid body move position over here, and there I'm using transform position because rigid body dot move position for some reason didn't work like I would expect it to work. We're also using transform. So yeah, this code is a little bit of a mess. Scratch that, a lot of a mess. Maybe I'll just do it off camera sometime. What do I want to do? Yeah, I think I want to leave it for now. Maybe figure out something else to do. Let's see. Oh, this might be useful. Let's do this. This is easy. Wait. Don't we have any player character? Player? Oh, maybe I did it the wrong way around. Controller is player. Yeah. I think we want like a two-directional link between the player and the player character. So This should probably be in the player, because like the player owns the character, not the other way around. You might notice that I'm not using any underscores or something like that for member variables. I've never found this to really add much useful information, and it makes it annoying if you want to move stuff around from a field to a local, or from a local to a field, then you have to change the names. So instead I tend to use stuff like this, which is unambiguous. So this is the field and this will be the local variable. So that's my coding style. And I know that some people prefer underscores. You have one big advantage because you don't need to write a pathfinding system for your player. My player moves to a click position next to the terrain. Oh, yeah, I would not want to write pathfinding for the game that I'm going to make right now. So I think if I'm going to add anything that's like an NPC or a monster or something, I think I'm going to stick to very basic movements. Because doing pathfinding with those things rolling around, like these, I think it might be quite difficult to keep the pathfinding graph updated. Then again, you could do something like if you have the terrain grid, then you might yeah, no, you probably don't want to put it into the grid, but yeah, you could have like some kind of system that manages some kind of grid system similar to this system, which just contains a lot of bits or booleans for which tile is traversable or not traversable. And then you could do things like if a grid moves into a certain region, then it will check which of the cells are currently occupied by some part of some other grid. Then you could try to keep some up-to-date grid of cells which you could use for pathfinding. And then probably you want those cells to be relatively a bit larger than normal cells, I think, so that that a player character will fit through it, or an NPC. Same picture as below with my pathfinding system. Yeah. So you're really walking along the edges. Yeah, makes sense. And the colors determine how far away it is. Yeah, looks interesting. Kinda starting to wonder what kind of game you're trying to make. What could you tell me a little bit more about your game? Because might be interesting. Yeah, player character, this player character, this dot player character dot player. What did I just wait? I think I removed something I shouldn't have. No. Oh, controller. It's called controller. Yeah. Player. Mark that as internal. Player character. This. Yes, so now if a player possesses a player character, then player character is being set this dot player character. Player is this. Okay, yeah. Now I also need some if statements for if it's null. In that case, we will probably need to remove our connection. You know, this is going to have to be two if statements. Maybe not. Yeah. If this dot player character is null, is not null, then we need to remove it. We need to remove ourselves, I mean. And if player character null, So first we check if we already have a player character. If it's not null, we already have one, so then we need to set its player variable to null. If player character is not the same as null, then we need to set the player variable to this object, and then we set the player character variable in this object to that object. Yeah, this is correct. This should be correct. Oh wait, I should not have discarded that. Yeah. So now everything should be fine again. Or maybe not. Oh yeah. I changed that. So it's the player which possesses a character and not the other way around. And basically I'm trying to separate the player and the player character for various reasons, such as separating movement logic from input logic and networking and stuff like that. And if I remember correctly, this is also kind of the way Unreal Tournament tends to do it. I'm not exactly sure because I haven't used it very much yet. But it seems to be, I think it seems to be a good idea to do it like this. And one other thing I have learned from a project that I worked on last year was that never couple your player objects to their inputs. Like, if you have one controller and there is players playing on that controller, and then he hands off his controller to another player, then on stuff like consoles, then you need to swap around how the players are connected to the inputs. So you don't want to hard code the stuff like player slots with integers and stuff. You want to be able to really easily attach a player to a different control device. Yeah, so last year I worked on speedrunners for Double Dutch, and there were a few problems in that area that we needed to fix before we could actually do certification testing and stuff. So that's a helpful tip if you ever want to do something like consoles. Yeah, not even on consoles, even on PC, it's a good practice, because then you can easily swap swap out input methods like, for example, controller type A or controller type B, or maybe even a keyboard. Yeah. B.enable. Oh yeah, we don't have a property for this just yet. Public player. Wait, this is the wrong one. Public player character get player character. Of course, I could also use just a default get and a private set, but yeah, I find this is a nice way to do it. Just in case you ever want to add something like serialized field, and this happens to be a player object, which is not something with a mono behavior, but yeah, this way you can still provide access to your stuff without everyone being able to modify it. If they want to modify it, then they need to call possess. So yeah, p.player. Why is this still not a thing? Ah, character. Yes, enabled is false. Disable. Character enable false. Character enable true. Okay, that should be working as intended. So right here I have a player system now. So now my player no longer responds to my input because I disabled it through the system. So even if the player is some strange place on the screen, I can always disable him from one place. And even if once we will have multiple players, then I could also disable them with one click of a button. Of course, that's probably most useful if I'm ever going to do debugging on the player. Yeah, not really debugging, because debugging is better done through the debugger, but yeah, you can hopefully understand what I mean. If I want to do some testing, it can sometimes be handy just to disable a certain system. Like, let's see, I could, for example, disable this one, and then I only see the background layer of the terrain. Or I take this one, and then the background layer gets disabled. Or I disable the collision system, and if I hit this one, then all the collisions disappear. I just disabled it and then re-enabled it really quickly, so it had to regenerate the colliders. Oh yeah, one other thing. It might be nice to have a look at the colliders, see how they are structured. So like if I go over here, then you can see the colliders as they are now. So right now I just I loop over the rows of tiles, and then if I ever get an empty tile, then the current collider ends, and next time a tile is found, then a new collider starts. So you end up with these long strips of colliders. And eventually I also want to figure out some algorithm to maybe make some even more efficient shapes that result in even fewer colliders, and which may also be easier on the physics engine, because take for example one of these long strips like this one. This has of course a very large access line bounding box, so anywhere in this region this one will be included, even if I am yeah. So if I can somehow change it to use more like larger, more square shapes, then the physics engine will probably better be able to handle it, and the performance will be even better. And if we have fewer shapes, then of course it will also take less memory for the colliders. So yeah, I still need to do that once upon a time. Probably not in the near future. Probably as soon as it starts to become an issue. You have structured your project very well. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've tried a lot of approaches over the years. Hey, missing reference exception. Object of type player character has been destroyed, but you are still trying to access it. Okay, well, I'll look at that later. I think I'm going to have lunch now, and I think I want to end the stream for today, because to be honest, I'm a little bit tired. I had a bit of a busy day yesterday, and I'm still kind of recovering from that. I feel that I'm not really very fit today, and not really making much progress right now. If anyone is interested in seeing the project, there is of course a description below the video on the webpage somewhere, which links to my GitHub account. The project can be seen over there. There's also a link to Discord. I have a little Discord server running, but there's nobody on there right now. So if you want to talk with people over there or with me, then you can do that, even outside the stream. And of course you can look at past broadcasts if you really think this is interesting and you want to see a lot more about this project. I believe yesterday I worked on tile variations, and I think that was a very interesting stream. So yeah, that's cool if you are interested. I'm going to end it there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for talking with me in the chat. That's really appreciated. I like feedback. So if you have any comments on audio levels or on other things, then of course let me know. So that's the end. I'll wish you all a good day. Goodbye.